Hi, I'm Janice Eaton. I'm an employee here at BB Barnes Garden Center, and I know a fair amount about roses, so I was asked to take you on a stroll through our landscape and show you what we have and tell you what I think about them. So let's go on a stroll, and I'll show you some of my favorites and talk about them. First thing I'll point out is that there are different classes of roses. There are probably hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of roses with individual names, whether it's Mr. Lincoln, the famous red hybrid tea rose, or if it's Princess Alexandra of Kent, which is part of the David Austin English Rose class. In general, we have our roses grouped at BB Barnes according to class. If you're looking for the David Austin roses, also known as English roses, they're right here on the left as you walk out into the outdoor nursery. Beyond that, we have our hybrid tea roses, our floribunda roses, our shrub roses, our climbing roses, and some other types that I'll kind of just clumped together in what I'll call landscape roses. We also have an entirely different section of the nursery that has all our knockout and drift roses, if folk want to grow those. As an example of the different types of roses, as you walk in, we have Julia Child on display. She is a very famous yellow floribunda rose. What makes a floribunda? Well, hybrid teas, some folks may know, have a strong central stem with a single bloom at the top. And people grow them as well as for their fragrance and beauty for the fact that they make great cutting roses. You can cut them off and put them in a vase to decorate your house. Floribundas are roses that at the top of their stems, they have additional multiple stems, all of which have a budding rose on the end of them. So you have clusters of flowers. Floribundas make up in having less of a scent compared to hybrid teas with their absolutely massive amounts of blossom. Julia is famous not only for the abundance of her flowers, but also because she is a healthy rose. And again, it's really important, in my opinion, to pick roses that have proven with the test of time and from their breeding that they can resist disease, because the old idea that we have to and need to drench our roses with chemicals in order to have a rose garden is just about as dead as the dodo. Most people know now that can have a negative impact on the pollinators and insect population and ultimately the bird populations that we want to help and encourage here in our landscapes in western North Carolina. So anyway, bottom line is Julia resists disease like the one called black spot. I'll have more to say about black spot later on, but she's a good floribunda and we have lots of her if you're interested. On a totally different end of the rose spectrum, David Austin's English roses became very famous because the late Mr. Austin figured out how to combine modern roses that rebloomed but had very little scent with the old-fashioned once-blooming roses that had extremely full palm-sized blooms with massive amounts of petals. So he combined the best of both worlds and set the rose world on fire internationally. Therefore, he created a whole new class of roses that we call English roses. And we have David Austin roses of many different kinds, those that will do well in a container on your patio, those that you would use as a blooming shrub in your landscape, and climbers that will be perfect for an arch and add amazing fragrance to your garden. I grew all three in my current garden here in town in Asheville. Now, walking beyond the English roses here we're getting to our hybrid teas to start with. And you can see this famous white hybrid tea, Sugar Moon, has the classic hybrid tea shape I was talking about, that single stem with a giant fragrant bloom on top. So if anybody wanted to cut a vase full of Sugar Moons for their home, they can do so. Folks who've been growing roses for a long time will know that in addition to new varieties that our buyer has judged worthy of including in this year's roses, we have old favorites like Chrysler Imperial, Mr. Lincoln, Dick Clark, Neil Diamond. These are all roses that have been in people's gardens for generations here in western North Carolina. I want to point out some favorites of mine. I wish we had more blooms to show you in all of them, but maybe by the time you come visit, they'll be open and you can take a look. Pope John Paul II is one of 2 white roses that I grow in my own landscape, because I have never seen a hybrid tea with the pure white color that you will see in Pope John Paul. It doesn't have the green cast that you will often see in other white blooming roses, so that's a favorite of mine. And it's right next to a rose I want to talk a bit about its breeder. Bliss Parfuma is one of the Parfuma series of roses developed by one of my personal favorite rose breeders called Wilhelm Cordes. That's spelled Kordes. The Cordes family in Germany had started breeding roses for health, the ability to flourish without massive chemical input, all the way back in the 1940s. They were really the first, as far as I know, to do that. And the reason that Cordes roses have always had a prime spot in my North Carolina as well as Louisiana gardens is their leaves have a thicker wax cuticle on the surface. You can literally feel the difference between this and some other cultivars. That wax cuticle helps the rose naturally resist disease spores like black spot, which can get splashed up from the ground during a hard rainstorm or passed along. So that is why I always recommend Cordes roses for someone who's looking for easy care. As we stroll along our hybrid teas, I see somewhere in this massive variety, I'm sure we have some grandiflora roses, which are like hybrid tea roses, but on steroids. Their blooms are gigantic. They do have multiple blooms, just a few at the top of their stems. A great example of an old-time favorite grandiflora is Queen Elizabeth, that gorgeous giant pink bloomer, and I think she's in here somewhere. Continuing along, you can see we have another series of roses developed by Cordes, no surprise, called the Veranda series. And these have also been created to be heavy bloomers, disease resistant. You could even grow these in a container or along a border where you wanted a rose that wasn't going to get too tall and spread out a bit wider than it is tall. Easy care and perfect for the edges. So we have cream veranda, lavender veranda, brilliant veranda, and right next to it is another Cordes series I like very much called the Sunbelt series, available in a variety of colors. My personal favorite is the one called Desmond Tutu. I've had folks walk back in this year who thanked me for recommending Desmond Tutu to them because it has been such a good performer in their gardens. Deep, deep, deep red blooms that just hang on even in intense sunlight, and that's a tough one. The buds are almost a blood black, and when that rose blooms, it is a heart stopper. one of my favorites. We have a lot. South Africa Sunbelt is another one I personally grow. It's a big, rich, buttery yellow that has all the easy care virtues of the rest of Cordis Sunbelt series. There we have some more veranda roses coming up. So we kind of got sunbelts and verandas together. Remember, the verandas will be the lower ones. The sunbelts will grow taller for you. And when I say taller, it is easy to manage a rose's height as long as you're not fighting its essential character. For example, you would not normally plant a climber and then keep chopping it down, trying to turn it into a shrub. That's where paying attention to the different classes of roses pays off. And when you're visiting our roses, our staff are happy to help you just make those distinctions. I am also available inside the store for any kind of rose questions or recommendations you might want. Proceeding down, I've got to stop right here at Honey Dijon, because Honey Dijon is a very famous and usually very hard to find climbing rose. You can see as you look down this row, it's famous because of that pale color the blooms have, almost like Dijon mustard. So I have a little honey growing outside my kitchen steps, as a matter of fact. I would not call her one of the easiest to grow. I keep my eye on her for black spot. But let me just say something very important about growing roses today. I grow my roses and always have as part of a living landscape. I expect them to form a positive ecological function for my pollinators and my birds and my wild creatures, which is why even down in Louisiana, with this very heavy temperature and disease pressures, I use only one type of chemical. It's a fungicide called Daconil. I'll be glad to show you the bottle. It's in a ready-mix red spray bottle. We carry it here at the store, and that's the only thing I've ever used. Now, I don't panic when I see a little bit of black spot appearing on my roses, because I know that I have planted vigorous kinds like Cordis roses. A healthy rose gets a little black spot, shakes it off by letting the leaves yellow and drop, and then it puts out more leaves. And if you're worried about those black spotty leaves being down at the base, you can always throw a little mulch on top of them, and that way the spores won't splash up on your rose. So I don't panic. I usually let my roses take care of it. But if for whatever reason you feel like there is simply too much black spot appearing on your rose, you spray the healthy leaves with the Daconil, both top and bottom, and it's designed to protect healthy leaves from infection, because the roses that have the leaves that have the spot are ultimately going to be dropped by the rose. Past Honey Dijon, we're proceeding into more climbing roses here. New Dawn is justly famous. I don't remember who bred it, but this is the rose that you plant if you have a tough north-facing wall that's going to get the brunt of your winter. I had another customer walk in and say, you recommended a New Dawn to me, and I planted it on my north wall, and I thought it was a goner this past winter, but it is now putting out leaves and buds. I said, great, that's what New Dawn is supposed to do. So it has this soft blush pink bloom that ultimately in sunshine does whiten out, but it's a good heavy performing rose, good for a barn too. Zephyrin Draw is not blooming yet here, though we do have one at the front of the store that is in full bloom as you walk in. She's loved by people because in addition to her rich pink magenta blooms, she's almost thornless. So folks like her to be planted next to walkways or maybe on arbors because they don't have to worry about thorns as much, and that's fine, but I'll just say you're going to have to keep an eye on her for black spot a little bit more than some other cultivars of climbing roses. Can be done. Now let's see what else we have over here. We've got lots of Don Juans. Folks who have been around a long time, been growing roses a long time, know that that is the famous fragrant red climber that generations of rose growers here in western North Carolina have been planting. So we've got plenty of Don Juans. Coming down here, I also see Joseph's Coat. That's another oldie but goodie. Not blooming yet that I can see, but it's a multicolored rose, literally oranges, reds, yellows, all in the same bloom. And it's quite a sight when it's in full bloom. Again, you're going to have to watch it for black spot. The reason I mention this, a lot of folks don't know it, but the same gene in a rose's makeup that carries the gene for yellow color also carries the gene for susceptibility to black spot. So that's why rose breeders, for their newer yellow roses, have focused on that health aspect, choosing the ones that are going to be more resistant. Let's see what else we have here. More dolls coming around. Oop, here comes a favorite. This little rose right here, called the Fairy. You can see how she's going to burst out with, trusses of tiny pink blooms. She is a class of rose called polyanthas. Way back when, it was largely the French, starting back in the 1700s, who were the great rose breeders of the world. Anyway, one breeder, I've forgotten his name, he combined a very large rose with a smaller rose, expecting to get an improved big rose. What he got instead was the Fairy. He kind of created this class of rose called polyanthas. She is a good one if you want a rose to cover its area heavily with foliage, grow low, give you lots of bloom, and is naturally disease resistant. The Fairy. Next to her is Seafoam. That's another good one to use to scramble, for example, on a hillside or an incline, to give you heavy coverage on a rose that I think it's only about 12 or 18 inches tall that can spread by feet. So that's a great hillside covering rose. Next to them is roses called the rugosa roses. There's a couple of reasons these are great roses. They are once bloomers, and that you will get blooms in the spring. But after that, you do not deadhead these roses, because in the fall, the rose will form its fruits called rose hips. And in these roses, they get as big as a gumball or a cherry tomato, and they are a bright scarlet red. So either your wildlife will love eating those, you will like them because of their ornamental quality in the fall, or you can even harvest them yourselves and make rose hip jelly, which has a lot of vitamin C in it. So this particular rugosa rose is called Blanc Double de Couvert. Excuse my bad French. I like her for her white flowers, which give the garden kind of a formal quality, even though it's actually a very tough rose. They're called rugosa because these leaves are rugose, and that is the botanical name for the quality of having this deep crinkle in the foliage. And guess what? That makes it much more disease resistant, which these are. Some folks call these beach roses, by the way. We walked right past one I want to talk about. This is Carefree Wonder, which I think should be in every naturalistic cottage garden, cabin rose garden, or roses in a tough mountaintop situation here in western North Carolina. Carefree Wonder is among a group of roses. They're not really considered a class, but they're called buck roses, B-U-C-K, that were developed by a horticulturalist. I think he was at the University of Iowa back in the 1930s, named Griffith Buck. And Dr. Buck hybridized a group of roses that he then field tested by planting them out in a field, leaving them completely exposed during the winter, giving them no extra water or food. And then the ones that survived and flourished became his official buck roses. Carefree Wonder is one of them. So I planted this, for example, in my mountaintop garden where it was zone-free like Canada in the winter. There's another rose we have here that has some buck in its parentage. I will show that to you wherever you can find a rose. And I will mention a website that is extremely useful if you're trying to figure out, well, what did these guys or women combine to create these rose cultivars? Who are the rose parents? It's called helpmefind.com/roses. And that is the best online deep dive rose reference I've ever found. You will see group sourced photographs of every rose cultivar you can think of, information about its growing habits, its disease susceptibility, its ratings by gardeners. So that's a good way to find roses that you're looking for or find out more about.
I know, I'm surprised.
What else do we have? Just for fun, we do have a striped rose that was really popular last year called Pop Art. It is these striped roses. I went wild for striped roses a couple of gardens ago, and I collected a bunch of them, and Pop Art was a really pretty one with that combination of kind of the salmon pink and a Dijon yellow. We have Sentimental, which is known not only for its variegated striped bloom, but also a strong fragrance. And next to it, Bolero. Oh, Bolero, this is another rose breeding family I want to talk about and recommend. They're the Meilland family in France, Meilland. They have also, like the Cortis, been focusing on breeding healthy, vigorous, disease-resistant roses. And Bolero, I think, is one of their best. It's got this deeply cupped chalice shape in the bloom, a real tender blush on the center of the rose. Healthy, and a great bloomer. And while you're visiting us, if you start poking around in the tags that are on most of our roses, you'll see, in addition to the trademark name of a rose, you'll see this little also kind of strange looking name with letters and numbers in quotation marks. Well, this is the name under which the rose was registered with the American Rose Society. And you see the first three letters here are MEI. That will tell you that it is a Meilland rose if you're looking for disease resistant. Similarly, many of our Cortis roses on the label, if you look for that little registration name, if you say KOR, that will tell you it's a Cortis rose. But 8 weeks on here, what else do we have? More veranda roses. Now we're getting back into hybrid teas. Here's Midas Touch, which is an old-fashioned famous yellow or gold, also beloved by our long-timers. Our peace roses, we have the original peace rose, Enchanted Peace. A lot of folks don't consider their hybrid tea collection complete without them. What else have we got going here? Chris Everett, this gorgeous, like flame orange bloom. When our orange roses start popping, people tend to just fly out of here. Which reminds me, I wanted to show you another old favorite. Ketchup and Mustard, which is a crazy sounding name for a beautiful rose. It has that bright yellow underside and that cherry red top of the petal. And a planting of these is a stunning sight. You will have to watch it for black spot. and have your daconil ready because of that yellow in it. But it's a fun rose to grow, and I've grown one in a container many times. Now, talking about our Perfuma series, I do want to point out that we are in stock at the moment, anyway, on Earth Angel Perfuma. That's another Cordis series, and Earth Angel has this hugely petaled, very globular, cupped bloom. You cannot believe how that rose smells when it starts to open. It has this kind of gentle mauvey pink center, cream on the outside, and it is famously fragrant. So this is a good one both for fragrance and health. Now, coming over here to our English roses, the ones I talked about that were created by the late David Austin. Austin's roses, I'll say in general, are grown like shrub roses. That's a class of rose I don't think I've mentioned before. That's basically what they are. Shrubs with gorgeous, big, multi-petaled, fragrant flowers. And the ones that, depending on how you want to use them, there are different Austins that we can recommend. Whether you're looking for a rose that will stay small enough to be in a pot, whether supporting pollinators is why you're putting the rose in your garden. Let's look at some of these. I will also point out the ones that are known or even recommended by the Austin Company as particularly healthy. One thing Austin did a number of years ago was they quit spraying their rose fields to see what would happen. They stopped using chemicals to artificially suppress disease. They were shocked at what they saw. So I think that may be one reason why they kind of pruned down some of the older roses that they used to offer in their line and have been introducing new roses that are also English roses that are more disease resistant naturally. But some that are particularly known to be disease resistant, Olivia rose right here, its actual name for Austin is Olivia Austin. This rose is such a heavy bloomer, workhorse of a rose, very, very disease resistant, just beautiful all the time. David Austin liked it so much, he named it after his granddaughter. And if that's not a vote of confidence by the man who created this rose, I don't know what is. So if there was only one rose that you were going to start your rose garden with, along with the Cordis and the Mayons that I've mentioned, and you want to put a toe into the world of English roses, Olivia is a great rose to start with. Another one known to be quite hardy, healthy, disease-resistant is Crown Princess Margareta. As I recall, she blooms with an apricot-colored bloom. Golden Celebration, not blooming for us yet. That's going to make a big, generously sized shrub with kind of a rich yellow bloom. I have this one next to my vegetable garden, along with some other Austins, because the pollinators like it so much. Princess Alexandra of Kent. This is another famously healthy, heavy bloomer. Again, if you're just getting into Austins and you like a rich pink color, Princess Alexandra of Kent right along here is a really great one to put it in part. Teasing Georgia. I have Teasing Georgia in my own garden. This is a climbing yellow rose, a yellow David Austin, that is a heavy bloomer, very healthy. I actually, because I wanted her in the front section of my garden, I decided to try turning her into a big shrub. So I started pruning. I'm kind of breaking the rule I told you. Don't try to prune a rose into what it's not. But I decided to experiment with this one. And indeed, I've managed to create a very large, she's probably about 5 feet tall and wide and about 6 feet tall now, heavy yellow blooming fragrant shrub by using Teasing Georgia. But you can grow, it's a great climber. The generous gardener is another famous Austin climber, highly fragrant, pretty pink blooms. Lady of Shalott, bees love this one. I also have this one next to my uh, vegetables. And I love the blooms really do look like that. So I think that wraps up my little tour with you through our roses for now. Please come visit us during Rose Fest for the next month. And I'm available to talk to folks. Our OSA people are happy to help you. Whether you're just starting out and want some advice and some help about picking, the easiest roses to start growing, or you're a connoisseur and you're looking for some unusual or hard to get and special roses, I think we have everything for you. So we'll look forward to seeing you. Thanks.